Nigeria is decades old, theoretically, if you think about when independence from the British were. So I think that when you put it into that perspective, like some of our parents are older than Nigeria. Like if you think about it like that, then we know that, okay, there's still a lot of work to be done. And even if we don't have the answers, there's still a long way to go and a lot of avenues to take to figure out what's next. There's obviously still a lot of corruption, which is residual impact from colonialism, imperialism, and slavery on the continent. So it's really hard to tell, but I think that a deep understanding of history would be very helpful in order to gauge the root of a lot of these issues, to understand how to remedy that.
Someone once said that Africa's destiny is in the hands of the Africans, primarily the African youth. And Africa can only be developed once Africans take control of their own political, social, and economic systems, their own business. How do you feel about that?
I do think the future of Africa is in the hands of African youth, because if you look at the demographics of a lot of African countries, the population is skewed more so on the younger side. There's just a lot of young people. A lot of young people inhabiting different countries in Africa. So I think there should be an investment in African youth for that simple reason, for that demographic reason. The numbers show that there's just a lot of kids and teenagers on the continent. The focus right now seems to be on the diaspora investing in the continent and hopefully changing things in that way. Because I am hearing this argument that the change needs to come from outside of the continent rather than inside of the continent. And then you hear the argument that the change needs to come from inside of the continent. At this point, what do we know? So.
And I hear a lot about Africa being infant-sized, so that Africa can't take care of its own self. There needs to be aid coming in from outside when no other continent or countries in other continents have ever done that, gotten aid to build up, their own countries.
I mean, well, a lot of colonialized countries and nations are still in debt to European powers. So the idea of countries having to come in and save countries that are still in debt to other countries, it's like very tricky, but I think that people feel more comfortable with the diaspora being the only people who should engage from the outside. I think it would behoove everyone to be honest and way more informed about African history, because there's still inspiration in there beyond we're kings and queens.
So why do you think it's important that people know their history?
It's important for people to know their history because history is almost like a living and breathing thing. It's constantly changing. It's not something you can really get correct because there's so many different sides. It's like a constant unlayering almost. And I think that when people venture into discovering their history and rediscovering history, it really, really, really helps to put the present into context and to figure out where to go in the future. As cliche as that sounds, there's so many clues if you look back into history, and there's so many ways to just contextualize where we are and what's happening. And it's just the foundation for forming identity and for forming your awareness of what's happening.